It's over, Todd.
Oh.
I know you're super excited.
Oh, hi.
I know it's. How are you? It's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah.
Been a
No, it hasn't.
while.
Yeah. It's been a while. No, it's good. It's going. Life is life and life
Right.
keeps going. Sometimes with or without you, but does keep going. How about you? How are you doing?
You are crazy good with song lyrics today. With or without you, like
That's all I'm doing.
you're full of them. It's good.
Yeah. I've actually just been doing karaoke for 2 weeks.
So since our last thing, you've just been karaokeing a storm. Is there competitions in Michigan for karaoke?
Oh, no, it's just me alone in a dark room crying in karaoke.
You go to bars that have nobody. Do you have karaoke
Correct.
night? No, you do now.
Yep. Sorry.
All right. So I have been crazy.
How are things?
I've been leveling up like crazy lately.
It does seem like you constantly have things going.
Yeah, like I got this last week.
Oh,
It's yours.
shit. You know what? I have that too.
Nice,
Look at that.
It's so pretty. So that came
I
out.
got it from my local comic book shop.
I got it sent to me by Scout. In fact, I actually got to yell at
Both
my
are valid.
customer. They're supposed to pull it for me. They made a big deal about it the first one. They're like, "You're buying your own book." I was like, "Somebody has to."
Yeah, right?
And then we got the trade for Broke Down a long time ago. I think you got that in the mail, right? Did yours come?
Yeah, yes, no, I don't know. I don't
Sounds
think so.
like
I don't
a
think
no.
I have it. I don't think I have it.
Sounds like a no. You were going through a lot, so maybe you didn't back it, and I have to give it to you as a friend. I don't know.
There we go.
All right, but tonight we have a great effing guest who I've known most of my adult life through writing.
We have to level up first, but that's
Both the
fine.
reading.
We have to level up first, but that's fine.
Yeah, of course you got to level up. Are you ready to level up?
I'm ready to level up.
All right, let's level up.
Let's level up.
We just look so happy. Like
I
everyone
know.
around us, we just bring joy to the world.
Mhm. I mean, those are frames from like hour-long shows. So
No. It's being on our show is an absolute joy.
Okay. Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Frame by frame, I'll find that smile. Now I'm ready to level up. Now I'm ready to talk to somebody.
Who do you want to talk about?
I don't know. Let's talk about somebody who, I don't know, somebody who's done some pretty big books.
Phil Hester.
Maybe.
But his thing was bright.
Yeah, the signal was bad. What about more like Marvel centric?
Okay.
Daredevil.
Okay.
Wolverine.
Okay.
Maybe a splash of Cap in there.
You lost me a Cap, but
Punisher and Cap. That's fine.
I think more of a like, I don't know. I'm more of a Night Stalkers guy, you know.
Night Stalkers.
Yeah, I'm more of a Night Stalkers guy.
Sure.
Let's play an intro for our guest. I don't think he needs bigger introduction than your cool video. I think he's excited about seeing his video.
All right, let's do it. Hey.
I am loving all of these intros.
They're very important. As you can tell, if I miss them, Todd's like, no, I spent hours editing that. We are going to do it.
I feel like I need to break out my rollerblades and probably like break my leg at the set. They're awesome. They are terrific. They're
thanks.
marvelous. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you. We were supposed to have another guest, but as if you guys haven't been paying attention, COVID ran rampant over at New York Comic Con.
Yes.
So luckily, we were supposed to have you on a couple weeks from now. We got you in a little early, which is great.
I'm delighted. Thank you for reaching out and making this happen. Always happy to get on earlier. I did not cause anyone else's sickness. I did not spread the COVID. That was not my plan. So I'm quite Machiavellian in my own way, but not to that degree.
You're not spreading a disease to get a spot on a YouTube podcast?
No. So
that's good.
Craftiness doesn't extend to that level. Yeah.
Sure. You got to work up to it.
No, I didn't go. I've never been to a New York show. It's weird. It's just never been anything that sort of lined up or kind of interested me. Everybody who I know goes sometimes says they meet great people and they see people they want to see, but it always sounds like it's so crowded and crazy that I I will put my energies elsewhere.
Sure.
Yeah, I saw you at Baltimore. You were at Baltimore, right?
No, I wasn't at Baltimore. Everyone says I should go to Baltimore, though. But like,
I,
I have got to get to Baltimore because everybody says, "Are you at Baltimore?" It's like, no, but I have a contact at Baltimore now, so maybe next year.
were you at MegaCon? I swear I saw you somewhere this year.
I was Terrificon, and then I
Terrific.
was at GalaxyCon in Richmond and GalaxyCon in Austin, and I'll be at GalaxyCon in Columbus
Okay.
beginning of December. So that will round out my year.
The Galaxy trifecta.
The Galaxy trifecta, very nice people. You know, they said, come here, here, here. And it's like, great, whatever.
Sweet.
Austin was hellacious getting there, 16 hours,
Ouch.
flight delays. Yeah, a little tricky, but ended up being a good show.
That's good.
Well, since you're in Connecticut, because
Yes.
I'm from New England. I'm from New Hampshire, Rochester area. Do you fly out of Logan or do you fly out of Connecticut?
Most of the time it's out of one of the New York ones, you know, JFK,
Oh, okay.
JFK, LaGuardia. Since they're booking it, you know, I'll let them pick. I've gone out of Westchester a couple of times because that's a little more convenient to me, but Westchester's the one that got me in trouble with the long flight delays. But these days, you never know what you're going to run into. Just the planes stay up in the ground while it's supposed up in the air while it's supposed to, and comes down the ground when it's supposed to. I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, that's a good mix. Those are the two. Those are the two big things that you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I look for in most things.
In air travel, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
So,
So comic books.
yeah, let's go.
You've made a couple of them.
comic books, funny books, yes.
Yeah,
All the
yeah.
color for
The
more
old
than
funny
a dime.
strips.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. I have done a few.
So let's talk about what was your first one? Where'd you start? Was Moby Dick the first one?
Who was my first?
Who was your
My first writing assignment or my first editorial assignment?
writing?
Because I was an editor for a good stretch before I really got the guts up to write. Probably the first writing assignment, which was never published, and I co-wrote with a woman named Margaret Clark for a good stretch initially, was a story for Defenders of the Earth, which is one of these 80s, 90s cartoons that just were bad intellectual property models. Everyone was trying to be Thundercats or something else, and they
Right.
glommed together this. So this was all these properties like Mandrake the Magician, and there was some kind of barbarian in there, and I can't remember what
Gordon,
the
right? Yeah.
yeah, Flash Gordon was in there. So
Sure.
and they threw them all together, and they went to defend the Earth, of course. So
course.
I wrote an inventory story with Margaret, which we sold. So you sell the plot, but it never got made into a real comic book. But probably the first one, I think we sold the Thundercats, but the first one that sold and then got illustrated by a little known guy named Lee Weeks was a solo Avengers story, an 8-page solo Avengers story for Mark Grunwald, which was pretty exciting simply because Mark Grunwald was Mark Grunwald even then.
Right.
And the amount of time he spent with us, two total like nobodies, making this 8-page story work, I thought was extraordinary. It always stuck with me. Like that's the kind of attention you put to stories and to working with creative people.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
really cool.
I mean, working with him is, he's one of the greatest, you know.
Yeah.
And he worked on everything. Like,
Oh yeah. Although he intimidated me because he could be very stone cold silent, which was part of
Sure.
his shtick, and so I didn't know what to make of him at first. Like, is this guy just just trying to phase me out? I'm not sure, but as you got to know him, you understood there was just all part of his many different personas.
yeah, I mean, he wrote. My favorite thing by him is Bloodstone Hunt. I really loved Bloodstone Hunt, the Captain America story. That's my
Oh
favorite.
yeah. I loved his take on Cap and many other things. I mean, and just a font of knowledge about Marvel and how the characters can and should work together, and really great reason why he's often talked of as like the heart of Marvel Comics of that era, certainly.
So for me, my two origin stories for you were
Mm-hmm.
I started with Night Stalkers because I
Mm-hmm.
was a huge Midnight Suns fan, so all of them. Which, by the way, I don't like to throw shade at Marvel, but I got to tell you, I'm so proud of them right now. They did not. So Legacy Numbers, this new thing that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
they didn't throw Night Stalkers with Blade. Blade is, it's so funny. Blade has the smallest, if you pick up a new issue of Blade, he's at like 29.
It's so low. We joked about that at the comic shop that it's
Right.
just like 29. Wait, what?
Because they didn't take any of his Night Stalkers. They didn't take
Nope.
any of his Tomb of Dracula. Like,
It's
just
only ones
does-
that are called
does come up
blades,
with
so
that,
it's
I
barely
guess.
anything.
which
I
is the
guess.
opposite of what Marvel does for every other title. Like
Right.
every other title's Legacy 5007. Like,
Blow through it, right?
Yeah, Spider-Man
Natural.
is, how many issues of Spider-Man have we had? Let's just
Right.
call it that.
so congrats
Yeah,
on that.
Night Stalkers was a lot of fun. It was a fun book, fun concept to work on, great people to work with, creative teams. We all got along really well. End it in a strange place, but that's how sometimes things are.
Yeah, was it? Did they end it that way just because of it was kind of losing its steam? Because Midnight Suns was like hard, fast. You needed to buy everything, and then like it was gone in like 2 years, right? Like it was like
Yeah, it's probably, maybe it was like the proto version of like Universal trying to do that monster verse of theirs. If you
Right.
remember that
Sure.
failed experiment where they were going to have Tom Cruise and Javier
Yep.
Bardem and all these folks. Suddenly the monsterverse appears.
Mhm.
There was just this idea and probably appeal to certain editorial people that they wanted a family of books of their very own, and everybody who was involved with it was hot to do it. We were all excited to kind of take these characters and recreate them in different ways. But I think when you hit the ground running without building up the right world around it, you don't always strike gold. Ghost Rider, struck total gold on its own. The rest of them definitely needed more TLC. And I think we also got very focused in on the grisly, arcane, weird aspect of it. You can really go down a sinkhole like that in a way, and you say, "Hey, this is great. We're like tearing people's skin off, and we're having a ball, aren't we? Doesn't everybody else having a ball with us too?" And you suddenly start to look over your shoulder and realize, "Oh, geez, we're just scaring people, not in a good way necessarily." And that wasn't all of it. And there was certainly really great, moments to it. But I think the combination probably created maybe more barriers for it. And there was always the weird thing with Doctor Strange, to my mind, to all of our minds. Like, we're doing a book about books about supernatural characters, and Strange for a long while was on the weird periphery of it.
yeah, and then comes in at the last with a weird outfit that he never wears again. It's very weird.
Exactly. Hey, I got this.
He's
what
like,
do you
I got a
think?
new suit.
Right. So I can only wear this in Midnight Suns books. It's,
But I think that your book specifically, was kind of the template what the Blade movie took from, because it had the Animal King, it had all that stuff in it. So I think that it has a lasting impact, even though it's the only one that probably hasn't been used since, right? I don't think there's been a Night Stalker since.
No, I don't think so. You've got obviously an extraordinarily strong character in Blade, and we're obviously going to see more of him. The others not so iconic.
Right.
We had to recreate them. I think they have that great potential,
Sure.
right? That was the whole conceit of the book. That's sort of what won me the book, was pitching it as, because they came to me and they said, we got these three characters, we don't know what to do with them, but we want to do something with them. So I'm the one who kind of came back and said, well, geez, they've all been tortured by the supernatural.
Right.
So they got two choices. They're either going to embrace the supernatural and say, yeah, we or they're going to say we hate it. We're going to be the Ghostbusters on steroids, in essence. There's no joking about Twinkies here. This is all full core, hard metal. Let's dispose of the supernatural and burn it all down. And ultimately, that was, I guess, unique enough amongst whatever anybody else was pitching. I don't know, that it sort of won the day, which was fun, because it always put them at odds against everybody else, even in the Midnight Suns groups. When we finished with everybody else, we're coming after the rest of you, which is not really great group dynamic, I guess, in the long run.
I mean, I liked it. I liked it.
Yeah.
It's cool.
But because of this, it led into Edge, which for me, that's my first Daredevil experience, because I always hated Daredevil
Mm-hmm.
growing up. He was just a Spider-Man, funnier Spider-Man, like a lesser
Uh-huh.
Spider-Man. He was fighting Stiltman while Spider-Man was fighting the Rhino. Like, I'm gonna read the one where he's fighting the cool Rhino instead of the guy who's really
The guy
tall.
in the long stilts, right?
Right,
Uh-huh.
right. Vulture is way cooler than the owl. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
like all these things. So because of the edge, I'm one of those few people who actually were like, okay, I'll give it a try. And you got me into Daredevil, and I read it all the way through your run. And then, of course, I was super excited. Being my age, I graduated high school in '98. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Smith was my thing, right? Mallrats. I actually enjoyed Mallrats in the theaters, unlike most people.
Sure.
It was in theaters.
It was
It
in
was.
theaters.
In theaters and malls only. It's just the only.
I didn't have one of those.
And then even following your artist over to Nightwing after my first DC book, but that's a whole different story for a different person. But you were my first Daredevil writer.
Wow. Well, thank you. That's. I think. Thank you. That's.
No,
Good.
I'm a huge Daredevil fan now. I won't miss it. My favorite of the week. So, and Todd read your whole Daredevil run.
I did. I've read almost all of Daredevil. So
It's.
yeah, and it's excellent.
For a long time, I didn't read my Daredevil run. So thank you, Todd. It's.
Which I think, assuming I did my research right, this is your first Daredevil.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes,
292.
I think that sounds right. And so, of course, we put the Punisher in the most prominent place on the Daredevil.
I know that's
That's
it's a classic. It's hey, look at this Daredevil book. Ooh, Punisher.
Look at this. No, really, look at this Daredevil book. That's exactly what we were trying to achieve. Yeah, that was the first time Lee and I would work on the book. The character together. Like I said, we worked on that solo Avengers story, but that was more of an assignment, and he happened to illustrate it. And then, I think we had some nice words back and forth, but did not know that we'd get to that point on Daredevil not too long after.
That's exciting. That's a big leap. 8 pages to shortly thereafter you're writing Daredevil.
Yeah, it was probably maybe a year and a half, maybe.
That's pretty.
But
that's not very long in comic years.
Still way too soon for them to have given me that character. But I fooled them. I fooled them all.
Well,
and there was a particular one you wanted to show.
I do. I want to talk about that, but I want to talk a little bit more history for a show because that's the bane of my existence. So DJ, we'll talk about that. Should I call you DJ or do you prefer Daniel?
Dan's fine. No, Dan's DG is when we're in pretentious company. Here we're all relaxed and we're having like a good time. So Dan's good.
Well, Todd can be a little pretentious sometimes.
I'll just mute. That's fine.
You wrote about 40 issues or so. Right?
Yeah, that's about right. Little breaks in between when I had to move on. I was launching other stuff, but yeah, I was the regular writer for about that length of time.
Which is crazy because that's a huge amount of time for the character. Like you're one of the few who's had the long runs. Like long runs are a good thing about Daredevil. It's one of those few books that are like, oh, you're still writing Daredevil? We eventually got to replace you. We'll get back to you. Yeah, I'll talk to you next year.
I think Mark Waid remains the longest run with 58 consecutive issues as well. So
is that
pretty amazing?
That's his first run, or is his the last one? Because Mark Waid wrote it twice, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it must be combined. Maybe I'm not sure, but I know.
Yeah,
it's
I think he wrote it twice. I think he wrote
a chunk of time.
Yeah.
He's just padding numbers.
Dude, I would do it too. If someone's taking my thing, hey.
Can I get like a mini? That'd be great.
Yeah.
Real quick.
You need somebody who does 6 issues? I'll get you from Zdarsky to somebody else.
Right. I need to boost my numbers, like hosting Saturday Night Live. I need one more.
Yeah, just one more.
You get the 4 now. You got is the newest miniseries that we're going to talk about a little bit. That's 4 issues, right?
Yeah, that'll be 4 issues. Yep. 90 pages. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So what's interesting about your run is I think you were the first, like the test route, and tell me if I'm wrong if you feel this way, writing for the trade, because the end of your run is like 3 6-issue arcs. Because you got Fall from Grace, you've got Tree of Knowledge, and then I think there's one more right after that, Flying Blind.
Wages of Sin, which I wrote under a peakish pseudonym, but Yeah, I don't know if they. I mean, they did collect Last Rites, which was the Fall of the Kingpin, into a
Right.
trade. Then they collected Fall from Grace into a trade. But weirdly enough, um, those are the only two trades you could never find for probably the better part of 20 years. I mean, I'd
Well,
walk into comic book stores and I'd look for, in that kind of way where you Google your
Hmm.
name, I'd look on the
Yeah.
shelf and I'd be
See what's
like,
there.
where am I? And
Yeah.
I was like, what did I do wrong? Like, what?
right.
Here's a guy who wrote one fill-in issue of Daredevil, and he's got a trade.
Right.
Yeah.
So those two kind of fell off the earth for a long time, but now they've resurfaced with all the epic, giganto
Yeah. The big
collections,
ones. Yeah.
where I think I'm well represented, and I think if I'm in one of those, by and large, I think they took the title of one of my stories, and that's the title they gave to the epic collection. So I must have known how to title a story, if nothing else.
There you go.
I had
mean,
I had I had a
it's
good
good
I had a good
names.
yeah I had a good Steven Seagal framework for naming stories.
Oh,
We
I was
just
going to ask what your inspiration for that was.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, pre-Mumu Steven Seagal.
Sure,
Like,
sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. Prime
yeah,
Steven Seagal.
prime above the law.
Yes.
That's Steven Seagal. Like,
um, well, bring up the comic. This
Yes.
comic,
All right. Bring up
This
the comic.
This
effing
one.
comic, this effing comic, this issue
yes.
has been the bane of my existence. Do you know why? I could never find it. My whole life,
Really?
it took me. I could always find. You could always find the one after the Lecter with the big in the
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Venom one was easier to find, but it was always in the Venom section. It wasn't in the.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Wow. I
Well,
thought, well, I never knew this one was hard to find.
that issue took me probably 10 years to find because I got it after the fact. Like in
You
this,
should just call.
I have no idea why.
I don't know why. I always thought 319, the original beginning of the the storyline, where they put the white cover with the Empire State Building, because that had such an initial low print run because nobody had any expectations.
You didn't know.
Right?
Yeah.
Then when it took off, then they went back for the second printing with the black cover. So that was notoriously underprinted, in its own way. But this one, by this point, I would have thought there'd be.
Yeah, I couldn't
It's
find
a really
this one.
cool cover too.
The Cap one was hard to find too, but it wasn't that it was hard to
Mhm.
find. They would always up it a little bit because I think it's just a good cover.
Yeah.
Like regardless of the content. Not saying that because I love Fall for Grace. I love this costume. I'm excited that you're going back to it. I'm so glad that it's not just a video game skin, right? That's what it's been for the last 20 years. Like, that is the alt skin, red or armor Daredevil.
And then some toys of varying degrees of quality.
Mhm.
So no, it's a real thing now. So yeah, I think we've doubled its output in one miniseries.
Nice.
Yeah, because it was only around for about a year, right? It ran this and True Knowledge and then a couple of the Edge stuff, and that's it, right? For the most part.
Yeah, and then they did. I don't even know if it made it into the Edge stuff. It was because immediately after I was exited off the book in elegant fashion, they did an issue where they just spent 22 pages basically destroying the costume. Like
Right.
they had somebody literally, I think, stabbing it with scissors, which meant it wasn't very good armor, I guess. And and Matt Murdock kind of going, "What was I thinking? What was I thinking?" Which I did not read until recently, starting my kind of research process for this. So I think if I'd read that story 20 years ago, I probably would have thrown myself off a building, like, in abject depression of like, oh my God, what did they think of my work? And now I read it and I laugh and I say, you just wasted 22 pages of storytelling on, destroying something that's yours. Like it's
Right.
yours. It's your costume. You paid for it. You advertise it. You put it on trading cards. You had the Hildebrands do paintings of it. It's on, there's toys of it. If nothing else, have him like put it in a Daredevil like case in the back of a closet and say,
Uh-huh.
you know what? Not so much right now. I want the red jammies again, but maybe someday. But
Well,
instead
yeah,
they
and
did
like
this
you could have an
crazy thing.
epic like breaking it out and being like, "Oh,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
serious," and then you get it out
Exactly.
and you do
Exactly.
the Batman or the Tony Stark thing. You have
Right, right.
you keep it around.
Right. Which if
You
this is
hope you
if
don't
this
need
is-
it again.
Yeah, yes, and invariably, if this miniseries is successful to some degree, I expect that's probably what they'll do.
Sure.
Like,
Which,
Yeah.
you know,
which, by
they'll
the way, think about it. Like the name of your series, I didn't even think about it until right now. It's just called Black Armor. Like,
Oh, I know.
Right.
that's all
I
you
know.
need.
I know. I
Yep.
had 15, 20 alternative titles, and some of them were okay, and some of them were really good, and then and then sales had just titled it Black Armor. So it was like, all right, we're done, you know.
There's that.
And then I was happy with it. You know, it was like, great, whatever. If you're going to sell it, then I'm call it whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Yes, it's just
Right.
it's pretty straight up title. Yep.
Yeah, I'm excited about it, and I guess let's bring up with that, and then we'll go to Nick Fury, and then I think we got to talk about Elektra because your Elektra that
Totally.
miniseries is well loved.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Black Armor. So Black Armor is coming out next month, right? It's November.
Next month, November 22nd, day before Thanksgiving. It's good for digestion, so as well as everything else. It's as you said, 4 issues. First issue is 30 pages, so it's a little bit longer than the next 3 or 20 pages each.
Okay.
And it's you know, as they approached me with it, it's kind of what they call these nostalgia type books. So they
Yeah.
brought me back, obviously, but it takes place in not the literal 90s. You know, it's not 30 years ago, God help me. But it has that vibe, right? So it sort of takes place in Marvel condensed time. I said to the editor, what does that mean? So that's like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, if you
Yeah.
were to think about it in terms of technology and vibes. You know, can we use cell phones and that sort of thing? But it has that feeling. Like, we definitely have gone for that, I'll say, that 90s feeling. That's the kind of thing we're going for. And because I had written myself into certain corners, not expecting I would be thrown off the book
Right.
mid run, you know, I had positioned certain things when that costume existed. So I've had to now go back in and pick up on certain parts of Matt Murdock's life that I have to navigate around, which at first seemed a big challenge. You know, he had faked his death. He had taken on this other con man persona of Jack Batlin. He had this other supporting cast of characters that I was starting to develop around him. What does that all mean? Like, how do you do that? I'm not sure. I don't want to deal with it. I want to deal with Matt Murdock and Daredevil.
Right.
But you know, getting into it, I found there was a really enjoyable space to kind of explore him in terms of his identity, how much he needs the vigilante, how much he needs the lawyer, playing things out like that. I had said to the editor, Devin Lewis, and they've been really great to work with. You know, at one point I said, okay, you guys, you don't know how much crap I took back in the day for this costume, because we took a fair amount of crap because nobody liked it then. But if you want to do it, then if we're going to call it Black Armor, is it about the Black Armor, or is it a story that just happens to feature the Black Armor? And so, you know, initially, you know, he said, no, it's just a story with the Black Armor. But as I got into it more, it doesn't become about the Black Armor per se, but you start to find great places of, well, what does it mean? Like, why does he have this? Is it tied to some kind of fun things thematically? What can you do with this? And when they unleashed Netho Diaz on it, who's the artist, and I'm sure you guys have seen, like, that's Mark Bagley we're looking
I'm an
at
indie
here.
guy, so I mean, he's just one of those guys who just leveled up, right? He was an indie guy with us for a long time, just leveling up, and
so you know his stuff, and he is. I mean, that cover is Mark Bagley, so that's great. But I mean, Netho is owning this, and he is ripping up the pages and ripping up the storytelling, and it to me, it's just wild to see somebody so different than the people I worked with on Daredevil before, just owning it, owning the character, owning the situation, owning the vibe, fierce, ferocious, putting Matt in this armor, this suit, in these really over the top situations. I kind of realized whenever the armor showed up, it was over the top situations, so which makes sense. So by dialing things up in this particular storyline, we're just having a ball and putting Matt in very dangerous places, and then having Matt have to not just fight his way out, but I think be quite clever about rattling the cage on certain things, putting things on collision courses, all in the right way. So I think folks seem to have responded really well so far to the things we're showing off, and I'm putting out lines of dialogue every now and again to kind of tease out some of the things. So I'm excited to see what people think on the 22nd and the couple of months afterwards.
Yeah, I'm super fascinated about it. I don't remember. You showed a couple of the villains, right? Who are some of the villains in this? Like I remember
we've shown off Sabretooth is definitely in
right.
it. Hobgoblin I think is come out because I think they've shown the issue 2 cover, and Mark Bagley's done all the covers, so I think there's a Sabretooth Hobgoblin thing there. There are other villains in it, and there are main villains in it, so I don't want to give away
Sure.
too much, but there's a high voltage series of folks that he just gets drawn deeper and deeper into this. The more he becomes aware of what's going on, which is based around people in Hell's Kitchen are starting to disappear, and he doesn't know why. And at first, because he's got this other identity, this other persona that he's living, and he's not even really aware of it because he's a little separate from Hell's Kitchen. He's a little separate from things. And then he's also of course, doubting himself and torturing himself. How could I have let this happen? Am I paying enough attention to my neighborhood? Because you got to torture Matt Murdock, doing this type of story.
As is tradition.
As is tradition, right? That was the first editorial direction I got. Don't forget to make him suffer. Don't forget.
Yes.
So
getting cocky.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, you can't be too confident.
You can give him a little bit.
Then
you bring him back down.
Yeah, take him down. So, this is but again, you get to play, from my point of view, with all of those tools that makes Daredevil fierce and great, because it is not just the physical prowess and the in-your-face action. It is that sort of, detective mind. It is that analytical mind. It is that lawyer mind. It is cracking the puzzle. It is coming to the defense of things, not just simply with a fist or a billy club, but again, with a certain, cleverness, I think, that overcomes complexity and complicated situations. Because this is a guy who, if he's in a courtroom, is going to figure out a legal defense in a really fierce, ferocious way. So I look at it as, when he's got this suit on, when he's got this armor on, or anything, he's doing a different type of defense. But it isn't just, there's an intermingling of the two sides, which has been fun to sort of get back into when I think I'm a much better writer than I was. And I had my stumbles, but I had some pretty good days too. So I'm feeling this is a really good representation of what I'm enjoying about the character.
That's awesome. And that is the best part of Matt Murdock and Daredevil. Is the angle that they can take, and just being the smartest guy in the room or the smartest fighter in the room, and what comes out of that.
Mm-hmm. And the guy who's going to get up, always going to get up, right? He's going to drag himself up.
Even when he probably should not.
Exactly. And spoiler alert, there might be a scene like that.
What?
What?
Oh, man.
I know.
I'll just trade weight now.
So do you know, I love Neil. I'm so excited that he's on this book. I'm so excited that he's getting his own little thing. But do you know if they ever thought about asking Scott McDaniels? Because I would have loved that team up back with you, especially because Scott's style drastically changed after he left Daredevil. Like when he went to Nightwing, I'm like, what the? This is the same guy?
Well, and his style also drastically changed on Daredevil, right? Up until 319, he had been doing Scott McDaniel, a certain type of Scott McDaniel. In some ways, you might have described it as a Mark Bagley light for that day and age. Good storytelling, enthusiastic storytelling, fun stuff. But, he had been talking a while as we were working together about wanting to change things up and try out new things. And because we were going to do this big, bold storyline and put all the cards on the table and roll the dice and whatever other things you want to put it out there, perfect time to do it, right? So when you turn the page from the end of 318 and then you open 319, it's like, what the hell am I looking at? Right. In a really cool way. Yeah. And for me, it was like lighting a fire as well, because it was the same guy I was very comfortable with, that we had a good rapport, good relationship, good conversations, good creative synergy. but suddenly we're amping each other up in a totally different way. So
you get that shot like it's new.
Yeah. So for him to go to the Nightwing afterwards, it's like, what do you mean you're leaving? But but I think I don't know that there were ever any conversations with Scott. I mean, I think the theory, I believe it's mixed a little bit of the old with a little bit of the new, right?
Sure.
And so I'm kind of representing the historical value here, but then you're ramping it up with a more modern. Not that Scott's artwork is not legitimate today,
but that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think
you're bringing somebody new into the fold.
Yeah,
and you're expanding the family while harking back to the old. That's a nice sentiment.
Yeah, I would love to see him, and I don't know.
He can do the reverse. Grab some new writer, and he can go.
And he can go do it that way.
He can go cut it up over there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see him do it. Hopefully, I don't know what their plans are for like variant cover or something like that, but it would be cool. It would be amazing to kind of see him because he designed this costume too. Right.
Yeah,
I mean, we would be looking at this costume. We would be talking about this if he hadn't put his touch on it. And his thinking behind it, and one of the things that I was always challenged with the armor for the longest time was nobody could draw it except Scott, and by that I mean Scott made it look really good. Right. He was thinking about the fact it fit the body, and that Daredevil still had to be athletic, and Daredevil still had to kind of move, like glass and oiled sleekness, over Hell's Kitchen. And yet he had this additional protection without becoming bulk. Right. 90% of the other people who drew that costume for the short window that it was in the world would act like, he's Iron Man, and they would bulk it up.
He's beefed up.
He's beefed up. He's like, he's got bolts. He's got all this other stuff. Now, I think Netho's version is a little bit more beefed up. But on the other hand, he owns it at this point. He's making it just cool and aggressive and ferocious and dynamic. And as he said to me at one point, it's like my job, meaning his job, is to make it look awesome. And I mean, there's not a page I've seen that I have not felt that way. They sprung him on me.
Sweet.
Which was this, because I had written the plot way back. We had to change some page count. Then I rewrote it. And there were a couple other changes I had to do, they asked for. So I did that. And I'm thinking we're going to go from the plot to a full script, because most comics these days are written, page one, panel one, dialogue, blah, blah, blah. So I'm in the plot stage and I'm thinking, okay, they're going to approve now the plot breakdown. And then we're going to go to the full script. So I've turned in the new plot, and then I'm waiting. Hey guys, what's going on? What's your feeling on this? Out of the blue, I get the first 6 pages from this guy, Netho Diaz, and it's like, what the hell am I? I mean, literally, my response was like, WTF in the best of ways.
Yeah.
Because it just blew me away. I mean, pages 4 and 5 of the first issue, I had described in that way that writers can do, because we can get away with a lot and sort of say, hey, just do this.
Yeah.
I had said, can whoever's writing or illustrating this, can we sort of encapsulate all of Fall from Grace, right? Which was 6-7 issues, right? With a dozen gigantic villains and explosions and fake deaths and ripped costumes can we just do this in a spread? Right. Can we somehow wrap this up? So he did it, and this is like the first thing I see, right? And it's like a movie poster beyond. And so I'm like, I mean, I'm just, doing, thank God,
He's so fast too. I've seen him like when he was assigned to Avengers and Vanish, like, just like, hey, you need to do this. And he was like, all right, 2 weeks. And like,
yeah. He's a beast. He is very, very fast, and it doesn't feel that way. And it's really easy. And I'm happy to make this the Netho Diaz show. I mean, I'm really a big fan, but I think that it's really easy to make things look cool, and not easy, but there are plenty of people who can make things look cool, and he certainly does. But I will say his sense of storytelling is extraordinarily strong. I mean, I've paced things out because I kind of know how to pace things out at this point. Um, and in my mind, it's like, oh, that's 5 panels or that's 6 panels or whatever, even in writing it in the plot format. And he's just opening things up or closing things down and making really interesting choices that are just amping the storytelling up in almost just about every instance. And where it hasn't been, it's just been, I'm not even going to say a difference of opinion. It's like I've looked at something and said, "Hey, what about this?" And he's like, "Oh yeah. Let's go with that instead." But it's just there's just a cleanness and a strength to the storytelling, even when you're seeing so much going on. And there's a tremendous amount going on in these scenes, and it's just powerful credit to him. Really, really, I'm really lucky to get teamed up with him. Let's put it that way.
That's awesome. I'm excited. I was already like in, but
now you're really in.
I'll really get it now.
Todd's a little younger than me, so
I'll bold it on my polls list. Yeah, this was not a current thing. Well, I was reading comics at the time, but I was reading comics that were in the attic that my dad had from a decade even earlier. So I was like,
Spider-Man has a black costume.
Right. This is cool. Yeah. Well,
and those were free too. So
exactly. Nightfall was the first story I ever read, and I was like,
"That's a pretty good one. That's a good. It's
pretty good." Yeah. And then everything else has been built off of that, and so I've been. That's where the pretentious comes in that Travis talks of. Well, I do. But I really when you talked about, because I just read Daredevil as a whole, and when you started explaining your run and everything, I was like, oh. I remember this going on and all of this happening, because I read this before I knew people. Like, I didn't know authors and stuff. I was just reading comic books. Yeah. And yeah, I remember enjoying it, but I like, it was fun. It was different. I like it. I feel like every time somebody's like, oh, I really hated when they changed it, I'm like, but it was interesting because it was not what I've been reading for 300 issues. It was really cool. Like, I liked the change.
Thank you, Todd.
Well, and you grab the right side characters. You're like Venom, and then in Tree of Knowledge, you grab Gambit, like right at the right time. You grabbed them at the time where not everyone was grabbing them. And you grabbed them, and you had them come in, do their thing, and leave. So like,
it was just fun. It was like, oh, cool! Look at that.
We were opportunistic in the best of ways.
Nice, nice.
But I that's, I mean, to me, again, that was the funniest thing about being asked to do this book. Was they'd sort of said, "Hey, we're thinking of doing something. Would you be interested?" Well, why wouldn't I be? Let's talk. Right. And then when they said, "Oh, something on Daredevil," it's like, well, that makes sense. But then when they said, "No, we want to do something with this costume," that was the thing I laughed out loud, because Todd, to your point, I think there were some people who were just haters. Before that was a popular thing, right? There's the pre heavy internet troll, version. And it took a little more effort to hate things. But there were people who were very, very vocal about how much they just liked this costume. They just liked the fact the costume had changed at all, let alone this Power Ranger thing or a bunch of other kind of derogatory things. And it was like, but time comes around, and the people who thought it was fun are the ones who are going to buy it now. And I think newer people are going to look at it and say, I can't imagine anybody's going to go in, look at that cover or the other ones, except maybe the Howard the Duck one, which is really weird.
I know people who will grab it because of that.
but and then open it up and they look at Netto's artwork, and who are not going to say, if I'm this much into Daredevil,
right?
Like, why won't I see what this is all about?
And you don't need to know anything, I'm assuming, because this is so far apart. You're talking about how you're catching people up pretty much right off the get. Like, hey, here's the big scene. This is where we're at.
If you know any of that stuff, if you read any of that stuff, you're going to see like, a couple little, like,
you'll get something from it, but
here's my little clue to that, or a
little Easter egg here and there, but
little line.
But if you don't know it, you're not going to be like, I didn't understand the last 4 pages.
I'm holding your hand and I'm taking you through and getting you involved.
I think I read it as when I was 16. I don't think I got it. Like, I think that the plot for both of those of Tree of Knowledge are a little above 16-year-old Travis. They were a little
they were a little heady, Travis. You could say it. It's
right.
good,
They were a little heavy. But when I got to reading it as an adult and I fully got it, when I finally find that fucking issue,
now it makes sense.
It's just that one issue. That's
right.
But so I think that was it. But if you don't know, I don't know if you've ever heard. Though I know Kevin Smith stole your job, you do know that his one story that he pitched, you stole from him. So he wanted his pitch when he signed it was to do Daredevil Can See, and that was your last storyline.
Oh no, that wasn't my storyline. Maybe
that was Scott Lobdell. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
Lobdell did that.
You're right. I apologize.
No, because
but that was right before.
That
but
was,
I want to show before we get off Daredevil, because we got to switch to other stuff, because I don't want to keep you here all night, because I will. I want to talk about this. Can we, Todd? I'm showing.
Yeah. I love. You know what I love about this is, I haven't gone to conventions in a long, long time. The first convention I went to was probably about now 3 years ago, and so I bring little prints of like stuff, kind of like hang up around me. I have a banner, this type of thing. The number of people who have never heard of this book, which is the first of the 3 team-ups that they did with Daredevil and Batman, and they're always like, "Oh my God, like I got to find this." And it's actually a pretty good story if I can say it myself. But it's the weirdest thing that for this team-up, which I think everybody wanted at one point or another, everyone's like, "We got to Daredevil and Batman. I've got to team up. They're so much alike, whether they are or not." And then it kind of came out, and then it's sort of like vanished. Like you think they could have collected all 3 of the Daredevil and Batmans together at some point and done a little trade of those. It's weird.
I always assumed it was because of rights or something. They couldn't decide how to handle it again.
Yeah, I think
they were like, "Oh, we worked so hard to get these issues," and then they were like, "All right, let's figure out the trade."
They did the amalgam ones.
The amalgams,
those things, right? So there's a trade of those. I have, one, I think.
Yeah,
because you did Assassins for that, right?
I did Assassins, right? The weird, bizarro land of Elektra and Catwoman and Daredevil.
Todd's really excited.
I'm like, oh man, because I read all this stuff before I looked at who wrote stuff, because I didn't care for so long. I just read comics.
But
so it's like, oh God, I remember that too. Comics. Oh yeah, I loved it. I hate it so much more now.
I think anyone who has a true enjoyment of comics comes into it exactly that way, because you read it for the thrill of just the thrill of being part of that adventure, and then you start to recognize art styles. I really love that guy's style. Oh, and I see him again. I want to go with him. Or I start to recognize, when Denny O'Neil writes something, I really love the dialogue, so I'm going to look at a Denny O'Neil story, or a Paul Kupperberg story, or whoever it is, more than something else. I know I backed into it, or came into comics the same way, in different generation than you guys, but that was the same thing. I didn't know who Jim Aparo was at all. I didn't know who Denny O'Neil was, but I looked at the line. If I saw a Jim Aparo art style, once I started to see that style again and again, I knew who that guy was. Oh, that's him.
Yeah. I can tell just how my pull list has changed throughout the years, because I used to just grab specific titles, and now it's like, oh hey, if Lemire puts out a new #1,
right,
you could just grab me that.
Yep.
Doesn't matter.
Your odds are very high. It's going to be
it's going to be something to check out. Or if there's a Frizen cover, you know what,
right,
throw that towards me.
Right,
stuff like that. But I love it, and that's really cool that you did one of the amalgams, because I think those are just fun times, and that's the epitome of fun in comics.
He's created all these graphics behind it, and that's not one of them that I.
No, it's not one of them. I have so many too.
The best part about and we'll get back to this Daredevil and Batman in a second, but I'm going to say the best part about the amalgam stuff was you had total freedom, that you never had to worry about what came next.
Yeah, right.
Ended it on a cliffhanger, and I don't have to worry about anything. It's like I walk away.
But what about the ongoing? Nope.
And I don't
Bye.
think it happen again now that they're owned by major studios. I don't think it's ever going to happen again. So I think you guys are the right time, the last little bit to do all these things. Which
those contracts would be crazy now.
No, that'd be impossible. But this was a lot of fun.
I like the way they started doing it towards the end, right? All right, you get one, we get one. You know, it's Spawn Batman, we get Batman Spawn. Like, what's the problem? Like, that's easy. Everybody just make your money.
And it was also a phone call because Ralph Macchio, who edited Daredevil, had been Denny O'Neil's assistant at one. So Denny O'Neill edited Batman. So it's like, hey, what do you think? And it's like, yeah, okay. And then I had to work for Ralph, who I knew very well, and Denny, who I knew a little bit, and Ralph, I knew what I could get away with or where I could work with Daredevil, and Denny, I would just be scared of. So,
good to know.
You already lost Scott at this point, so you were getting him back for a minute, right?
Yeah. I mean, little trivia for what it's worth. I mean, Lee Weeks was originally supposed to be the artist on this.
Oh, really?
In fact,
interesting.
Which would have been a very different story. In all different ways, but we had signed on to do it together, and then the book's release got dragged out, and then they would not guarantee the rate they had promised him originally. So Lee's a very smart business type of guy, and just said, I'm out. Like I'm.
And that sucks because Lee Weeks should have definitely. I love Scott McDaniel, but at the time, you wanted someone with that credit for both of these things that had done a lot of stuff. Where Scott didn't have that at the time. He did Daredevil with you for
the Daredevil cred right at this point. So he could bring that in. But I mean, I was able to get Lee back in when he and I did the last issue of the first volume of Daredevil, which was Daredevil 380, which is a nice way to kind of get him back and us back together for a little bit of a last hurrah.
Yeah, I say I have that, but I don't have the big graphic for some reason. But right there in the corner, 3. Oh no, that says 342.
No,
that's 342.
Yeah, no,
I have 3. I had 380. Never mind. I'm just turning it black. I failed.
You're done. Yeah. Well, let's bring up Elektra.
Okay. I got that one.
Yeah, bring up Elektra, and if you can put on the other side by any chance the Captain America Punisher, is that possible?
No. These are static images.
He could do music. He can't do everything.
If you want to send me some money so I can do some multimedia stuff on the fly, I would love that. But
I have a computer in front of me. What are you?
The reason why I say that is because Elektra, Root of All Evil, and your Punisher, Captain America, are found in every long box in the world all the time, constantly. Like that. Is that right? Yeah, I just think they were overprinted so much.
I can show it like this though.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Nice. I think they're both great series. So I hope more people. I hope more people find them. That way. But Elektra was a challenge and a ball to bring back in Fall from Grace, and then this is a great opportunity to give her moment in the sun as part of what was going to be our long-term plans for many Daredevil series and Daredevil miniseries and Elektra miniseries, and we had a whole crazy scheme in that if only we continue to control the world sort of way, for what to do with it. But as a way to tell, I felt like a really strong Elektra story. This was a great one to do. And again, with Scott, we were so telegraphic at that point that I didn't know exactly what he was going to do, because he could always do whatever he wanted, based upon what I was writing, and he certainly did. But I always knew it was going to be right. Like I knew it. I knew when I see it, it would feel, that's what it should be. Of course, that's what it is. And so just a real fun way to rip through a bunch of ninja. All my ninja books came in handy at that point.
I like this, and I'll probably get some hate mail for this, but I like this more than Elektra Assassin.
I don't know about that. Yeah.
Well, the reason why is that was full Frank, like existential crisis, like over-explaining, like going deep in your head, and that's not the Frank I love. I love the Frank that's simple on the page, like Daredevil Year One, Bullseye, The Death of Elektra. Like it's I don't need to overspeak because I can do this better than you, right?
Right.
Frank Miller when he did Electro Assassin. Like, I need to tell you like how smart I am and how these things I know and how deep I am. I need to show you everything. I can be Alan Moore. Well, he can't be Alan Moore.
You're Frank Miller.
You're Frank Miller.
Those are two different people.
It was the first one I said, oh, you can tell a regular type Electra story. I didn't know this was possible. Nobody told me.
I guess I'm spoiled because, Electro Assassin for me was one of the earliest books I worked on as an assistant editor. So right. I didn't know what was possible in comics at that level.
Right.
Suddenly coming into comics as a semi-professional, I was still in school, for at least half of that job. So I was working there part-time, and then I would come in, and then that would become a full-time gig. But when you start to see that stuff appear, right? Not even so much Frank's scripts,
right?
Which were a little bit protected by Joe Duffy, the editor. I've got them. I'll edit them. But when it started to kind of come to life with Bill Sienkiewicz's pages, like that was like mainlining acrylic. That was like mainlining, artistic crack. I mean, that was just over the top, incredible stuff. So I totally understand what you're saying, Travis. But I guess for me, because I was experiencing that so real time, to me it was almost the training ground of what was possible if you really just turned the dial so far up.
Well, and I would argue I'm in the minority. I think most people will tell you, but for me, this is the first. Like this was I probably wouldn't have picked up the Electra series in like the early mid 2000s if it wasn't for Root of Evil, because if it was more Electro Assassin, like I just wanted to kill people. I don't want to think about things.
Yeah, she kills people here. I had her kill people. She's an assassin. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like Frank really wanted me to like think about it and why he's killing, and who she's killing, and how important that this person needs to die, and how thought out.
Right. Sometimes you just want a ninja to be a ninja.
Just kill some ninjas, please. Let's run through it. So we got Nick Fury. You did a whole bunch of Nick Fury. So
I did a lot of Nick Fury. Nick Fury, I got to work out all my James Bond issues and everything, all the psychological impact of watching all the James Bond films as a child and young adult. And it was a great chance to work on the super spy character of Marvel and have, so much control and bring back evil characters like Baron Strucker and destroy more of Shield and all those great things. It was a ball to work on. Just really, really fun. And Jackson Geis, Butch Geis, was the artist I worked on initially on that, or not initially, but when I really took over the title, not the first limited number of issues I did, but when I became the official writer. And he was just another artist who you didn't know exactly what he was going to give you, but once you saw it, it was like, yeah, that's right. Like that feels right. Because sometimes he would do very bold, almost like movie poster shots of things that was not exactly what had been indicated in the plot. Maybe it was like this much of the plot, but it felt very right, for the moment. So in those kind of dynamics, you really get a chance to experience it through somebody else's eyes. And then you get a chance to fill in a different take on the script. Maybe it's not what you expected to do with the words, with the captions and the balloons and such, but it takes you to a really cool place.
Now, and just curious, was it selling all the time? Because I don't know if Nick Fury's ever sold well. Was Shield selling well?
This cover is awesome. I'd pull this cover today.
Isn't it? It's a great cover.
It's great.
It was selling like okay. Right. It was not in the definitely Fury was on I would say the lower echelon of quote unquote real Marvel titles, right?
But I'm sure they knew that going in, that a Nick Fury title wasn't going to like blow the doors off or anything either.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the Nick Fury series had come out of a series that Bob Harris had written. I think it was called Nick Fury versus Shield, right? Mm-hmm. So it was the whole idea of, before every Mission Impossible movie was about Tom Cruise or Ethan Hunt being betrayed and having to fight the Mission Impossible organization.
Yeah,
they did that with Nick Fury, like back in the day.
Yeah,
and that did really well, like as a limited series and a prestige limited series, meaning it was like square bound or whatever. It performed really well. So I think that was the definite jumper cables to say, well, let's do another new Nick Fury series. Right. And so it did all right. But ultimately it could not compare to the sales of anything. Pick your Doctor Strange,
because
Daredevil, superhero. Yeah. But for me, I mean, personally, it was my on-ramp to being recognized as a real writer within Marvel, even though I had done a lot of other stuff for some licensed titles or some of the Epic Comics stuff that I was working on an established Marvel Universe character. That was
like this one counts.
This one exactly. This one counts.
And like he's a D. He's not an F. He's a D character.
Yeah,
that people are fond of. Like just because they're not big characters. That's the thing about some of those C, D level tiers. Right. When you take the cape off and people care about him, they really care about him.
Well, and Daredevil was a C character when you were writing him. He's gone,
which is just wild to think about.
Sure. But if I hadn't written this, and I know because Ralph Macchia, who again was the Daredevil editor, I knew from talking to Ralph a little bit, but also through the grapevine, Ralph liked what I was doing with this character, which he liked a lot. He liked Nick Fury a lot. Sure. It wasn't in his office, it wasn't, but it was one of those classic characters that he liked a lot, and he thought I was handling him well. So when Daredevil opened up and there was an opportunity to pitch for it, I mean, it wasn't given to me. I mean, imagine everybody was pitching for Daredevil, even if he was a C character, right?
Yeah.
Frank Miller, yeah.
Well, so I went to Ralph, and I was, at the encouragement of somebody else, and I went to Ralph and said, hey, do you think I could pitch? And Ralph was a nice guy. At least to your face. And I
mean, he was in the Karate Kid. I mean, these things.
Exactly. And but he was like, yeah, Dan, sure, whatever. But it was always, as I've said, in that sort of tone of, not, yeah, sure, kid, whatever you want to do. and so I don't know everybody who pitched for it. I knew other people, who did.
And some names we're years away. Nobody's going to get in trouble.
The only one I know for sure is my friend Greg Wright, who was very capable.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
His own, but I don't know who else pitched beyond that. But I know other people did, and I don't think I was in the running of like somebody who might really be considered.
Right. At the time,
I was in the running. Sure. But I mean, but he called me up not too long after, said, hey, yeah, you got the book. It's like, what? Like, what? Now I got to do this?
Oh, crap.
Now I got to do what I wrote in this proposal? And yeah, exactly. Oh, crap. So then you're kind of off to the races, and you're off and running, because then we were on that on-ramp to 300, and then we had to get our sea legs, and we had to jump in. But again, point being, you do a character like this, and that then becomes the opportunity to do something more.
Yeah.
All right.
Which I would say he was B at the time, but that's just me. I wasn't reading it currently.
What, Todd? I didn't hear that.
I love Daredevil, so I take offense at him ever being a C level character.
No, he was.
I know, and the Avengers used to not be a big deal for like most of their history until movies happened. But
I mean, it took us a lot to even get attention. On the book, internally, I mean, one of the reasons we did fall from grace was to force attention on the book. We kept trying to get, certainly the book should sell on its own merits and should sell and blah, blah, blah. But there's got to be some sales. There's got to be some promotion behind it.
Sure.
And, there was a certain point in time that if it wasn't a spider, it wasn't a mutant.
It's not one of those tent poles.
Right. So that's just a little bit of the fact of life. But so we were then engineered a story that had a ton of marketable things around it, right? Throw Matt Murdock into the blender, kill him off, quote unquote, change his costume.
The death of Matt Murdock has a good sound. It's good ring to it.
So you're doing a lot of stuff, and that's what you have to do, sometimes to kind of like, move it up the echelon to where now that then they wanted to do Marvel Edge. right? They wanted Daredevil included in Marvel Edge
Right.
because we had reintroduced attention, I think, onto Daredevil beyond Frank Miller, right? And Frank Miller's work on Daredevil is without peer,
Sure.
But there was a certain point in time, and I even said this in promotion at one point. You're putting out they put out an ad at one point when he was coming back for I think it was Man Without Fear. No, it was either Man Without Fear or Daredevil Year One. Or
one of his two
one of those,
right?
Yeah.
But the ad was it's Miller time. Right? Which is clever for a beer, clever in a beer commercial sort of way.
Yeah.
But I said, what you're doing is you're saying that the character isn't valid unless Frank is working on it.
It's like now you should read it, and it's like, well,
certainly the character is extraordinarily valid when Frank is working on it, but he should always be valid, and that's where you
because
run
it's
into
really interesting.
Yeah. And so you should be embracing this and helping to kind of, build this, up in a crazier way. So
it's nice to see now Daredevil gets lots of love now.
Lots of love. I mean,
it's great. It's good to see. And they've done it. I mean, 2 great Zdarsky runs in a row.
The comic is
great. And I think it's one of those, it's just got that lasting power. And it's really, it's fun to see, like, talk about these from however long ago and be like, yeah, it's still Matt Murdock. Well, it still sounds like a character that you would know today. And it's really cool. It definitely has that lasting power.
Yeah, I think he's got that Spawn effect. I think people jumped on, if they didn't know about Frank Miller, they knew about him after Kevin Smith. They came on for Kevin Smith, and they've been reading it ever since. I think there's a few of those, just like Spawn people, who are like, I'm going to keep buying this book. I don't even know what it's about anymore. I'm going to keep buying it, like, because they're just invested, and it's so different than anything on the shelf, because you put Matt. Matt is always through the worst spots, right? Worst things ever happen to Spidey. He loses his wife every 10 years and gets her back.
Yeah, at least.
Aunt dies, aunt comes back.
Right, yeah, it's the same thing. All right, so we got Wolverine.
May the 6th.
One of the best covers of Wolverine.
Yes. Oh my God. That was going to be my segue when I talked about the Shield cover, and then we went back to Daredevil. But I was good because it's like this one sells, and then oh man,
the Terminator cover.
Come on, it's just so good.
He was so happy with that. He was so happy with that. It was
I'm
going to do it like the Terminator. It's like that sounds awesome. Yes, do that.
And it is. It's epic.
And then you did Terra Inc., which.
And there's the reflecting version of the cover.
Right.
Yep, so cool.
My friend loved Terra Inc. so much, and I never understood it. I read it, like I just don't get the character, but he would buy Terra Inc. like all the time. In fact, I messaged him today. I was like, "Guess who's on my show? I'll ask him any Terra Inc. questions." He's like, I don't remember any Terra Inc. or even liking it. I was like, "You fucking did. I'll tell you that."
So he had no questions for me.
There's no questions for Terra Inc. I think Terra Inc. has come and had his day and left and come back a couple times. And I don't think Terra Inc. is ever going away. It's one of those characters like Sleepwalker and Darkhawk, like in a rotation.
It could be. I think. I don't know that they quite get it or know what to do with it. It was a twisted book then. It's definitely. I think if they were ever to do something with it, they should call me again, just because I think it requires a certain sensibility to
let's bring it back down to where it belongs,
which is in the gutter, and in very, very strange, violent, snarktastic ways.
Yeah. In the last book that you bought me, got me in a huge argument with one time. So I was saying, never buy TV show comics. They're always bad. They never have good writers on them. And then you came out with this.
I got it.
The Sliders was a ball. That was a gift, man.
I love this TV show. I didn't know this existed until Travis was like, I need you to make a graphic of this. And I'm like, okay, I need to find these comics.
There's like 12 issues of Sliders through various parters. But yeah. They're fun.
Yeah. We that was we got to talk to Tracy Torme early on and sort of like deconstruct certain, and this was when the show was still running, certain aspects of what the show was about. So I think that certainly helped. And I think that a lot of times movie adaptations, TV adaptations, at least at a certain time, I don't know how they're done exactly today, they were definitely treated as Z-list, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got the license.
Mm-hmm.
They had to be churned out
Just
overnight.
print it.
Just print it, right? Find anybody who's sitting around. You want to write it? You want to draw it?
You're holding a pencil.
Yeah, you're holding a pencil. Let's get it out. Wasn't on the A-list radar. My office has Spider-Man. My office has whatever. We don't have time for this thing. So it's the rare beast of an editor, I think, who takes the time to want to invest in more attention. Now it's different, right? Now there's I think a different level of quality to adaptations in a certain way. But this was certainly an instance where these guys really cared, I think, on an editorial level, and I always had to pitch these stories. Like, even though I wrote, I think, maybe the majority of the Sliders comics, and they would come in like 2-issue sets, or there's a 4-issue run, or there's a 3-issue run. I always had to audition. I didn't do them all. I did quite a few of them, but which was, on one hand, I wanted to kind of just be given them, sure. But on the other hand, I respect the fact that you had to kind of like step up to bat and really think it through. And I was always disappointed. The last one that we pitched, and then it just didn't happen from their end, was there was supposed to be a Sliders Quantum Leap crossover.
Oh,
yeah, and it was. I wish I still had the write up for that, but it was pretty good as I remember.
Yeah, Quantum Leap is back. We're Sliders. Oh man,
but
that'd be fun.
Yeah, it would. It was a fun idea. It was.
That is cool.
I don't remember all the specifics of it, but it was kind of a kind of a weird melding of who's sliding into who and who's leaping into who, and it was. The weird thing about this is, though, I always recognized after the fact, all these covers are very gloomy for what was essentially a fairly bright show. Like bright, like it had a lot of poppy energy to it.
Uh-huh. It verged on sitcom, like it was
sometimes right.
Like depending on which world they slid into and all of that. Sometimes the red light is just the go instead of the green light.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what a weird world. But yeah, no, that is interesting.
The door doesn't squeak. Like, that's your whole
no, is the gate. The gate didn't squeak.
Right, the gate didn't squeak. You're not like, literally, you're a scientist. There's no
right. I would also have just stayed there.
Right.
I'd been like, close enough.
Exactly. Done.
But I will tell you, Dan, as someone who's an up and coming writer, and there is it's run the same way.
Up and coming.
There's all right. I'm a writer doing.
I pulled you from Diamond. Just saying, don't sell yourself short.
There's companies that still do it the same way. I was pitched by a company.
Churn it out.
Hey, here's our list. Which one you want? Just let us know. Give us a pitch. We've got it. And then one of them, I won't say what it is on the air, but I gave a pitch, and they were like, "Oh, we want it in the universe of, but don't use any of the characters. We're not going to use any of the characters." I was like, "Then what's the point?"
So why?
Right. It's not like we could use their like Jack's Generation or what, like just.
Yeah. So you just want a new IP. Okay, got it.
And it was a crime thing, so it was even worse. It's not like it's sci-fi. Like,
so it's like crime. Real world anyways.
So just write a crime book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not any better, Dan. It's not any better.
It doesn't get hashtag. It doesn't get better.
It doesn't get better.
I remember I had to do the Strange Days adaptation, which was the James Cameron film.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So and it was 48 pages from a 2-hour movie. 48 pages, still tight, in a week. So that was like
whoa.
So that was like
How long did Art get it for?
Maybe half that week. I'm not very long. It was just it was just one of those jobs of like, okay,
that is really just print it. Wow.
I mean, it was not.
I kind of want to find it.
I don't know if you do. I don't know.
That sounds right up my alley. 48 pages done in like a week.
Right. Right. It's not like trying to get Moby Dick in 48 pages. Sorry, Travis.
That is wild. All right. Man. So we got to address the
questions. We've got what's your most current?
Yeah, like so comic. There's a gap in your career. There's a gap. Now I make this joke on the show a lot of times. Mm-hmm. I go, everyone here is fighting for 4 years, right? Mm-hmm. Like everyone who wants to get into comics, they want to get to as big as they can so they can have what most people have is 4-year career, right? Like, so you had your 4 years and then you've disappeared for a bit. Well, what you been doing?
I had 13 years. I had 13 pretty solid years.
Well, he meant your metaphorical 4 years, but yes.
Well, I mean, comics kind of crashed in 97, 96,
you something like that.
Did it?
Hey, newsflash, man. If you heard of the internet. And so, that was a rocky time, obviously, for a lot of people. And, and so for me, I was in a very bad place, I think mentally, like in the sense of like, in retrospect, I could have kept playing in comics probably in a very light way. Right. But I had a very black and white mentality about things. So if I can't make this my career, I got to make something else my career. Right. And I by some strange coincidence fell into the world of marketing and advertising, specifically really digital advertising for the most part, which I had no background.
Jump to the enemy.
It it was like, okay, I'm kind of into digital stuff, and they're offering me a chance to do this and learn more as I'm kind of going. And I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about advertising. I knew nothing about marketing. I knew nothing about, the different terms and blah blahs that I could bore you with, right now. Yeah. But I seemed to fit really well into it. And a lot of the skill sets that I had especially achieved as an editor more than anything, because as an editor, what did I do? I managed a team of writers and artists and letterers and colorists, and we had to achieve a certain goal with a book by the end of the month, and we had to get out X number of titles,
distilling that chaos.
Right. So as a creative director, which is essentially what I became, various and sundry, titles off of that, but I managed teams of art directors and writers, and we had what were called creative briefs, which were the specifics of a
this
project.
Is what you need to do,
and you had to get so many of them done, by a certain time, and you had a lot of irascible people telling you different things, and you had to sort of keep your head on straight, and so those skills, which were never meant to be translated in that way, once you sort of separated yourself out of, I'm a comic book editor, became very functional within that space, and everything, frankly, about storytelling and everything about thinking about things from a narrative point of view. I want to get your attention. I want to take you down a path that I'm going to construct for you. I want you to feel and experience something in this certain way. And I want to leave you at the end of that in a pretty good place, or an excited place, or a sad place, or a place where I want you to do something, even if it's just buy this next issue. That's all, again, the tent poles of marketing and advertising. So the narrative structures and the storytelling that I took for granted, and I was still learning and continue, I think, to learn, became a good tent pole for the way that I would approach things. Some people approach things differently, like, smoke and mirrors, make it look good, do this, do that. But I always kind of fell back to that storytelling narrative attitude. And that really allowed me to be very, relatively very successful, and I learned a lot, and I learned a lot of discipline that while I think I could have, again, probably a different version of me played both sides a little bit, 70, 80, 90% advertising, and maybe 10% I'll still try to like dally over here or something.
Sure.
I had crystallized the discipline that I needed much more so in that kind of environment, and I came out stronger on the other side.
That's awesome. That's cool. No, that's big, and I do love how when you take a step back from a lot of things, you'll notice your skills can transfer to so many different things. If the door opens, and you're like, could do that. You just never would think to, because you're staring down this one path.
Right. And you think this is all I do. Right. And, it's like, and then when you deconstruct it again, that's actually translatable skills.
You're like, oh, this isn't stressful. I've been here before.
Yeah. Right. I mean, hard, it's hard to separate yourself.
For sure. Yourself, yes, definitely.
It's certainly possible.
Yeah. Neat. Well, and then what brought you back? Yeah.
I mean, I think it was as simple as, it was as simple as getting invited to the Terrificon show in Connecticut, which was the summer after COVID, was that when they did their first show after COVID. And I knew people who had gone there. And then I knew a guy who knew Mitch Halleck, who runs that show, well, and he said, Mitch will give you a table. Do you want to go? And I remember driving up to that first one, and I'd been to a show in 20 years. Really, and so most people thought I was dead. Probably, it's like, and you're still alive, you're still here. And so it was. I remember driving. It's about an hour and a half, maybe a little close to 2 hours from where I live. And even like halfway there, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I going? What am I have nothing new to talk about. Like, is anyone really going to care? And that's sort of like imposter syndrome or whatever running through your head. But even in that post-COVID thing, because it was a smaller show, people were still a little nervous about kind of coming back to shows. It was a lot of fun. It was fun to see other people I knew, from comics and reconnect with them. And frankly, it was fun to kind of actually interact with people and have people be interested in the stuff that I wrote from a different perspective, right? Because I had no baggage or no stake in it anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you're going to make me feel really great about Daredevil because I'm writing Daredevil right now and I'm going to get full of myself, or you're going to make me feel really bad because you hated it, and then I have to carry that baggage for next month. Like I'm so far away from it that it's
just good.
Yeah, it's just good, right? And
and
it's like if you didn't really like it, or you don't know who I am, or you think my name is Dr. Chichester because you just read the D and the G.
Really there's a D in a period.
Honestly, it's a real story. Yeah, like so what are you a doctor of? Let's move on. But then there are people who come up to me and they know chapter and verse, like everything I've done. And Travis,
that's
a little
cool.
bit like you, they've said like the first issue of Daredevil I ever read was this issue. No. And I don't know that I would have wanted to read another issue of Daredevil immediately if I hadn't read this one. But I read this one and it got me involved.
You got hooked.
So that's fun to hear. So I did that and it was a fun time. And I said, you know what, I'll go back and do it again. And then it was this last summer, not this summer we just got out of, but the one before then, where I'm at my little table with my little banner and I'm just chatting with people. And this guy just happens to come up and he's like, hey, DG, didn't know I wasn't a doctor. And and he
that's a good sign.
Good sign already. And he's like, hey, it's I really like your stuff. I'm CB Cebulski, and I'm slow, man. I'm slow. And so like 30 seconds, to process. CB Cebulski, it sounds so. Oh, so
DG, CG, is he mocking me? Like, what's going on?
Exactly. Initials, what's good? And he was nice.
Oh, wait, what?
And I jokingly just said, hey, so good to finally meet you. And, I've been meaning to call you about those pitches I've been working on. And he just said, well, as a matter of fact, and then he's the one who segued that right into they've been doing these nostalgia books.
Yeah.
And would I want to, take a swing at something without knowing what it was they were thinking about? And I was, well, yeah. So he gave me his Marvel address. He gave me his personal address and not thinking anything was going to come out of it. And I just reached out to him and lo and behold, he said, I've already gotten in touch with Devin, the Daredevil editor. Why don't you guys talk? And we did some dancing around and started to throw around some ideas, and it just started to come together naturally in a very fluid way, because I don't think I was carrying any baggage around it, Todd. I wasn't.
That's really cool.
This wasn't. My career wasn't hanging on this.
Right. You didn't need the gig per se. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It didn't need, not that I wasn't going to bring everything I could to the gig, but I didn't need the gig.
Yeah. Your tightrope while not having a net was close to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just I got this.
So I could look at it and I could say, all right. And then it's just a matter of, all right, do I still have these do I still fit in this thing? Do I still have
sure
the groove of it? But I had been working on this Kickstarter project, for a
Yeah,
long
let's bring that
while
up.
as well,
yeah
and so I had reacclimated myself to the skills of writing a comic book. So it wasn't totally alien to me because I'd been working on this thing that you just showed, Axel's Infernal, for a while. So that was maybe fortuitous, big word, big $5 word, to getting into doing Daredevil because
yeah
I already run the test bed. Does the engine still work? I still know how to craft a story, and I still know how to hit a beat. Yeah, I've been doing it on all the issues I've written for this thing.
Right.
yeah
So when I got to Daredevil, it was a matter of oh, I better read and see what they're up to. Oh, it
yeah
seems like it's good and different, but it's still Hell's Kitchen, and it's still
still Matt Murdock.
still Matt Murdock, and I know
Yeah.
this world. I can
He's
do
still
some.
emo. Yeah.
Yep.
He's
Yeah.
still,
He's still pretty sad. Okay.
still sad, but he's still a player. He's
Yep.
still a bit of a horn dog. He's
Yeah.
still got all that stuff going on. So, I can work with all that.
Oh, he's
And
still fighting crime. Neat.
and he's still fighting crime.
Oh, all right.
Hell's Kitchen still looks like it came out of 1930s.
Yeah,
even though
I do love Hell's Kitchen. Never gets a coat of paint.
No, even if you actually go to Hell's Kitchen today, it's
like
that.
Yeah, it's weird because it seemed really gentrified.
Oh yeah.
But then in the comics, it's like, wow, this place is rough.
Oh, it's rough. It's rough.
Weird.
Is this your first creator-owned book?
This is, yeah. I mean, I worked on a ton of creator-owned books when I was at Epic, which was all creator-owned for the most part. So I always had.
We didn't even scratch that. I got those
for creator own mentality. But this, as a series that I've actually created myself with Carl Waller, is the first kind of foray into doing anything like this. So this is an idea. It's essentially the concept behind it for viewers and listeners is that if you imagine hell's real, but there's not just one hell. There's a multiplicity of hells. Every culture has a hell, right? The Aztecs had a hell. The Mesopotamians had a hell. The Egyptians, Dante's got a hell. So
the Americans live in it.
The Americans live in it, right? But these hells are no good if they can't be believed in. And so they need to literally deliver hell on earth or hell to earth. In order to amp up the belief. And some are really easy, right? Everyone's got the Satanic Panic hell, the Dante's hell. But
those are strong, yeah.
Those are strong. Dungeon Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons.
The more obscure hells, need help. So this thing called the Underworld Transportation Authority runs a series of different things. They have a plane division, they have a shipping division, and they have a trucking division. So our heroine, a woman named Percy Cross, is quite morally compromised, but not necessarily a classic sinner, if you will. But she gets hijacked into this against her will, and in doing so, has to become the co-driver with a more experienced driver named Virgil Shift, because I like to play with my biblical references a lot, my classical references. And then there's a very demonic dispatcher named Necros Terminal, who is sort of their overseer in making sure that they will deliver these damnations on time. As he sort of says, every second counts when your business is eternal damnation. And so it's a fun, frenetic, grindhousey sort of story. And Carl's artwork is quite off the hook. He's a very bold, dynamic artist. I worked with him a long time ago at Dark Horse on a book called Motorhead, which is where we sort of found a good groove. And as you can sort of see from this color, it's got a very vibrant, painterly style. Wes Wong is doing the colors. We got Pat Brousseau, who's Eisner nominated letterer, who's done every book under the sun, is lettering it. Comic crafted this really wild, bold logo, which I love for its retro feel. My direction was like, I want something that I want a tattoo on me. I don't know if I will get that tattooed on me, but I might consider.
I want the option.
So this is the first issue fundraiser, crowdfunding, to kind of get the first part of a 5-issue storyline, which would tell all of the first arc, if you will, of what happens to Percy. She gets dragged into all this. So we finished it. The book exists. Nice. It's all done. It's all colored. It's all ready to kind of rock and roll. But as in many of these things, you want to pay the people fairly. Right. You want to recoup the things that you have paid them. And, we paid whatever you want to call it, like market rates, to make this happen. But it's got the usual kind of great rewards, I guess. If people are into that, there's lots of, original art. There's original sketches. There's mini prints. There's variant covers. There are not any, NC-17 not safe for work covers. I'm sorry, kids. I know. But
that makes it so I'll actually back it, because that's how I walk away from something.
But yeah, I so doing my research on this, I'm looking at some. It's like you got 50 variant covers, and it's just going into
that's the thing.
Core, hardcore, beyond core, extreme core. I don't know where it's at. It's just
it wasn't like that. Yep. It has become that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Yep. And but
so cool.
It's a I mean, I think anybody who's doing something like this is going to say it's a labor of love, and you're really passionate about it. But we've been living with this story for a long time. Carl and I had cooked up the bones of this story, the really kind of blown out aspect of this whole big world many years ago, and then we lost touch with each other. And then when we reconnected, it was this moment of, almost at the exact same moment, we said, you remember that story about that girl going back and forth to hell? And I came to believe, I read this great book by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic, which is like one of those creative inspiration books. Yeah. And I fell in love with it because the conceit of the book is that creative ideas exist as things. Like, imagine they're actually objects. Right. And I don't know if metaphysically I believe this whole thing, but the idea is they're going to visit themselves with you. Travis, they're going to come to you, and if you're smart, you do something with it. And if you're not smart, you let it go and you say, I'll get to that next week. And then next week becomes next month, and next month becomes next year. And then a year and a day later, somebody else has done that exact same idea because you didn't do something with it. And I sort of said to Carl, we lived with this for a while. Different roads took us to different places. But now if we don't do something with it, it's just going to show up somewhere else. And exactly like this. And somebody else is going to, because it just felt like it's a story. There's a lot of richness and a lot of bizarreness and a lot of twistedness in a very, as I've described it, it's fiendish, but it's fun. It's kind of like
fundish.
Fun? No, I'm not going to go with fundish. Even though
I know that's a bad. That's not a good.
Are you dad, Todd? Because that was right up there. It's dad.
Oh yeah, no, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. But I love Army of Darkness. It's got a kind of an Army of Darkness, Sam Raimi, ripping feel to it. My good friend Greg Wright, sort of described this as The Good Place meets From Dusk Till Dawn.
Ooh,
so it's got this.
I like both of those things.
Yeah, so it's like I said, I'm stealing that and I'm using that.
Yeah, that's great.
But we've sent it around to a bunch of our, peers. Graham Nolan, Jimmy Palmiotti, Howard Mackey. Terry Cavanaugh, Dan Brereton, I'm dropping names, but to sort of get pull quotes. And these folks, I think they would just delete the email and say, Dan, I really can't get to it if they really hated it.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of come back with some positive ripping endorsements, which we've been using. And we're tracking along and we'll see where it goes. We got a nice project we love. Boost, which was nice, like on day one or day two, but we didn't get the fund it in 48 hours thing that you sort of hope for. But so you keep kicking along, and we put some add-ons and we put some stretch goals, right. On it now. There's a nice little Dean Kotz did a great variant cover, so we made that mini print. Everyone gets a mini print who's a physical backer as a stretch goal. And then somebody suggested, and I said, what the hell? I put the stretch goal on for I will do mostly a dramatic reading of the first issue script, with Carl probably interjecting a lot of shit along the way, but that would be, another fun exclusive thing that everybody can kind of get in on.
Well, you don't know this, but Carl has a connection to me. So Carl,
I did not know, Travis. Yeah, tell me.
Stefan Nilsson.
Yeah, Stefan.
It gave me my first work in comics. So he gave me my first.
Oh, okay.
Bodies, which was one of his original books before he did IDW, before he did Aftershock, all that stuff.
Awesome.
So I've got that, and so the pound was stuff. So I may have heard this in at Kong's Pass.
Excellent. So that's that. I love that. I love that circle. I was just on with Stefan and Carl the other night. They're doing like their things are getting sketchy. Like
the things get sketchy.
Yeah. So I went on to do a little promo, and that's very intimidating. Nice. And they've got like 5 people with their cameras down on their awesome artwork,
right?
And then I'm sitting like, yeah, like,
hi,
hi. You people are really talented. And I'm over
my advice as a Kickstarter person who's done over a lot. I just did a lot.
I was like, what's your number now?
22 for Orange Cone, but I do some for other people too. So
that's amazing.
The one thing that I would recommend is make sure you get that variant cover like as a big image up there. So I don't see that on it. But I did
that's
send
a
you
great...
to my crew, and you were at 77. We got you up to 80, and you're jumping up. You're at 75. I'm sorry, we got you up to 80 backers.
Thank you, man. Thank you. No, that's a great idea about the putting the variant cover as a bigger image. Like
you got to see that variant cover because it's beautiful. Because I saw the print when you were promoting the print, but we definitely want to see that. That's my one because it looks beautiful. I know you've got advice from the big dog Tyler, so you got.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. That's I got overwhelmed, I think, on day 1 and 2 by all the lovely spam, which was... They're
all going to help you. You just need to reply to all of them and just give them some money. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
You are most inspiring project ever seen before. Insert special quality here.
Yeah.
Please, we shall help you. But no, I'm learning things. I mean, the idea about setting up a separate gallery for the original artwork, all that kind of stuff. You learn by doing, and so it's definitely. I've gone from the total existential crisis of oh shit, it's not funded yet to well, let's just keep seeing what we can do to modulate the dial and get folks kind of like tuned into it.
I hope people don't watch this episode so they don't know that I can just send them a couple of messages to get some backers, because then a lot more people go to the bad stuff. But I do want to do this one message of one guy in my private groups that said, "Dude, DG is back making comics again. I would have cried if I missed this. Thank you so much for showing us."
Hey.
Thank you, man.
I think it's not about your project, man. It's just about getting the word out there and let people know you've been gone a little bit.
DG's back on the block.
Guess who's back?
Yes, exactly.
DG's back.
It's like I'm gonna get my M&M costume on, but
it's. And I know you're back again. Spoiler: I can't talk about it in the air. I also know that you're working on another book. Someone told me and let it slip. I could probably
Travis's Little Birds.
I am. Well, I mean,
I don't think we can announce it. I don't think we're allowed to, are we?
For Black Box?
Yeah. Are we allowed to say that?
We could talk about Black Box. I mean, Dimitri.
Okay.
Is
that does explain. I was like, Black Box popped in for a second. That's interesting. I was like, are they just watching to make sure nothing's getting spoiled?
No. Yeah. Two actually.
Two? Okay, yeah.
Sweet.
That's why I don't have a book there yet, just for the record, for people who are listening.
Is it me? Might be the problem.
Classic DG.
I was like, hey man, like I heard a lot of people been suggesting me. He's like, you're on the list, but we got DG now. That's how I found it.
So I just dropped from 75 backers to like 55.
Everybody just pulled back out. Like, oh,
you're good. My plate is full. It's fine.
Travis is busy.
No, Demetrios is a great guy, and we did that same actual. Convention where CB came up to me, and this is a perfect example of not having to be in the right place at the right time and being ready for it.
Right.
Because he had been working with Scott McDaniel. I think that might have been the first Black Box title, was this thing called IT, which was like this cyber thriller financial thing that they had done together. And he was a big fan of Fall from Grace, and he had approached me when I was still in the heart of the whole corporate land, right? He had sort of said, I got this idea, and all of Demetrios's ideas are out there concepts, I find, at least the ones he comes to me with, it's this really weird,
that
thing.
seems to be the trend.
So can we turn this into something cool and thing? And so he came in with this interesting idea, And I was like, yeah, maybe. But I was perceiving myself as, no, I have to be this. I have to be this corporate marketing advertising guy.
Sure.
And I let it slide, and so I give him credit for actually coming back around to me at this show. And I apologize profusely. And, mea culpa, who I was then with who I was now. And he had this new idea for something with a strange concept a little bit initially, or at least a character background that I wouldn't have thought for something like this. And so it became the beginnings of what will be a pretty, I think, fun heist thriller type of series. And he's got I shouldn't talk about the artist's name, but he's got a strong artist on it.
He always has strong art.
Yeah, still going through some of the character design, because it's a semi near future world where things are twisted up as the near future always is, as if our current present day
it's
enough.
It checks out.
Yeah, actually at this point I'll take Fallout, right? I'll take living in a Fallout like zone, for that
right?
Seems pretty cool, having a little Pit Boy and walking
I want the
around.
Pit Boy. Yeah, Pit Boy's pretty sweet.
So
Big
working
roaches.
on that for him. And actually, I mean, those are written. That's 5 issues.
Nice.
I wrote that kind of concurrently with this Black Armor thing. They were almost like neck and neck. And as I said to him, GalaxyCon is his best friend, because when I'm sitting at the GalaxyCon tables and the traffic isn't high, I always seem to kind of like be sketching out these black box things. And so he came to me with another idea, and I just took him through the outline on that, and he seems pretty keen on that as well. So, but
I'm
you know,
on
they're
the list, but I'm behind you, so I'll figure out when my time is.
I'm on the list too to pull the books.
Okay. But yeah, you know, it's interesting to be playing in the space again for sure, and not having anticipated it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really
But I
cool.
think maybe that's when you're in your best place to do these things, is when you aren't anticipating it, but you're open to it.
Those are the best life. Those are just the best life moments in general.
I think so. I think
it's just right. You're prepared for it.
Yeah,
but it's unexpected, and it's
right,
and it just kind of fits, and then the work comes, but it's a good time, and that's like the best stuff right there.
Well, we have a couple of questions for you.
Yes, we have a series. We have 20 to 30 questions that we ask every guest. No, it's like
all right.
We have 4 questions for you. 3 or 4, depending on. Sometimes one gets bundled into another. But
do you want to start this time, Todd?
Do I want to start this time?
Let's switch it up.
My goodness, I don't know what number episode we're on, but this will be the first time we go out of order.
This is the first time we've gone out of order. Let's do it.
Right,
so, especially, it's interesting since you're returning to the market. So this question is really interesting. So, what do you think makes you stand out in the comic book market? What, aside from just being like, "Hey, I'm back," what do you think is like the hook for you?
Well, the cheap answer is I stand out because I'm really tall, and nice. I dress really well in conventions. You know, I think
you were the guy in the top hat.
I was him.
All right, I did see you.
I think I have a. I think I have a very strong voice and a very flexible voice. You know, but I think the structure of my stories are always really well thought out, and I think they're about something. You know, even when they're just a straight up adventure, invariably I've introduced something, you know, to them. So I think people can crack them apart on a few different levels and find things to enjoy. And then even as you did, Travis, maybe come back after a point. You know, you said you read it when you were 16. You got like, hey, this is kind of cool, but I'm not sure exactly what's going on all the way. But then a few years later, you read it more, and there's more packed in there. Sometimes I'm more successful than others in the past in terms of striking that balance. Now I'm much more confident about making sure those come across. But I like my stories to be about something, and I like to make sure that there's stories that I enjoy and that I know I've always put a lot of myself into, because then I feel that's going to come through for the readers as well.
That's awesome. So you're like Daredevil's nunchucks.
I am a billy club. I'm just
exactly. But strong and flexible.
There you go.
Yeah.
His was armor. They weren't flexible.
No, his things still were though.
This is biomimetic armor. This is very,
Yeah, it takes the kinetic and then it hardens up.
Yeah. When we were doing this series, it was the same exact time, the first Fall from Grace series, the same exact time that John Romita and Frank Miller were doing Man Without Fear, the series they did together. And so they did this round robin interview with me and Scott, Pat Garrahy, maybe Ralph, JR Jr. Frank wasn't part of it.
Jeez.
He just
group.
Wasn't available.
No, I'm saying that's quite the group to get together for.
And it was about Daredevil overall, so
sure.
JR was talking about, John was talking about, and I think John Romita Sr. was there too, so he was talking about the Man Without Fear series. And then they came to me and they're like, tell us about this armor. Tell us about this new suit. And I started to kind of describe, we're doing it and here's the reason it's doing it. And it's made of biomimetic materials, which is, materials that have been based upon things from nature, like abalone shells or, orb weave, spider web, or rat teeth, it's looking at the molecular structure. And I'm describing it in this science nerd sort of way. And then I look up and JR is looking at me like, what are you smoking? And it was just this brilliant moment. And I reminded him of that when I saw him recently in Richmond. He cracked up, but
amazing.
Did you, this is not your next question, but I need to know that. Because I love Daredevil.
What was I smoking? Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yes.
What were you smoking? Because I've been to Connecticut. I'm from New Hampshire. I know it's a little bit more expensive, but I hear it's better. No. Has any of the newer Daredevil writers ever reached back? Because I know sometimes they reach out back, for, like a Bendis or Fraction, or is your run like just too wild out there? They've never reached back.
You mean to me?
To you personally?
Reached out to me, or
yeah. Someone reached back for information about him taking over.
No, it's weird. Not in that way, and I don't know that many have referenced some things. I think maybe they picked up on stuff now and again, but I think it also becomes. Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I gotta say, because I meant to mention it earlier. In Shadowlands, they teased that your costume was coming back, and then it was a new black costume.
Oh, okay.
But they showed it from here, and you're like, oh, and the DD is similar. You're like, what's that next issue?
No.
It's just black.
No. But I think most people in comics are very friendly and they get along great. But I guess I realized, I was on a panel with I've been on a panel with Ann Nesenti, and then recently I was on a panel with Mark Waid, and I thought we had a really great dialogue going back and forth talking about just Daredevil and our points of view on the character. And it just occurred to me, I haven't had enough conversations with people, with a relatively small number of people who've really written Daredevil for an extended period of time. And I'm not talking about, I threw Daredevil in here, I did an issue. There's still a fairly small number of people who've written him for committed runs of time. Yeah. And it's really enjoyable to have that sort of shared experience. But no, nobody's reached back and said, why did you put this here? What did you do, with this here? So maybe again, they might have thought I was dead. I wasn't around.
I say they might now that you're back on the block.
That's it. Now that I've got my my AC/DC music going.
Yes.
All right. So here's the question.
He is back in black.
So what makes you keep going when the career becomes difficult? Because you kind of quit from marketing. As a marketing guy trying to quit marketing to comics, I understand that. That's what I do. Todd's been laughing the whole time because I own a web design company.
Yeah, it's great.
I don't want to do web design anymore. I want to make comics.
Yeah, it's really funny. It's just it's like you're on both sides.
Right. Well, you're talking about now? Well,
yeah. Normally we ask now what keeps you going after when it becomes difficult. You kind of explained why you came back, but as you know, it's a different environment. Comics, the way they're made now, the way they're processed, it's not about long form storytelling anymore. It's about doing it as minimal pages as you can, like your Marvel work, or even your Black Box. He has a minimum of 22, I think, right?
Yeah,
doing it as minimal as you can to get to the trade, so we can move on to the next thing.
Right, and do it that way.
It's a different world.
I think, well, there's two parts that, at least I think I'm interpreting your
Sure.
question. I think there's two parts of it, at least the way I'm thinking about it, right? So there's the part of it that like keeps you going just as a professional, and what do you want to do as a storyteller and a creative person in anything, right? So I got laid off, right, December 2020, right? Our lovely year of 2020, right? So that was my big corporate job. I should have been on top of the world, but company I was at, imagine, what the world was like.
Sure.
So, I had to pivot to freelance work, freelance marketing work. And, you have to then think about, how do I reinterpret myself there? I went from this big corporate job with a big corporate title and a big, running big departments and all this stuff, to now reimagining myself as a sniper, like a solo practitioner again. And now doing different things, right? Different, and now picking back up on these comics and this sort of thing. Yeah. But I think that's very empowering if you can allow yourself to again get into this flow state, like the sense of, what do I want to be? It's not that I want to be a comic book writer, or that I want to be a comic book editor, or I want to be a creative director, or a marketer, an advertiser. I want to do creative work, right? That's what I want to do. And I'm really good with words. I'm really good crafting stories. And some people aren't. Fuck you, ChatGPT. I'm not. I'm really good telling stories with words, and some people aren't, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But I'm there to help them do that. If you have a problem, I can solve it with words for you, on websites, on flyers and stories, in comic books. And so I think movies, videos, these type of things. So you have to then just continuously remind yourself that that's what you're going for, not trying to kind of go for the next gold ring, or worry about, that I don't have that big title anymore, or somebody else got a big title, or somebody else got that title, like a literal title, that they're writing on something. Right. It's just continue to do creative work in a way that is, you feel like you're in that flow state. That's what keeps me going on that one level. And then the smaller part of your question, I think about, well, how do you break it up into, if everybody's aiming for the trades, right? Mm-hmm. But with Black Box, is a perfect example, like, the 5-issue story that we're telling, I think is a pretty good ripping 5-issue story, right? And I, way too much world building. I laughed and I said, next thing I do for you is going to be in a warehouse with one box and a bench, because, I suddenly realized
you got to even it out, right?
We just built like a whole world with all new characters, with all new settings. Like the whole thing was insane, like at the level of having to describe everything. But you're looking at those discrete 20 pages per issue, and then how does this pace into the next one? Has it pace into the next one? Has it pace into the next one? Has it deliver on the cliffhangers? That's the structure of comics that we all have probably enjoyed, right? As you've got into it, that's the serialized nature of it. And for whatever reason, it spoke to us when we picked up that first one. I went on a vacation with my wife and Greg Wright and his wife, recently, and we were laughing. Greg and I were laughing. They were scowling at us, because I got this Kickstarter comic called Lamp Black. I don't know if you saw this thing, but it was this really wild Miyazaki looking sort of thing. And they did the whole thing as a horizontal, like cinematic, presentation. Really, really beautiful. And, I was showing it to Greg, and then they were looking at it, and I could see, like, just comics aren't their thing, like our wives' thing. They couldn't interpret, like, it wasn't badly done. The comic wasn't badly done, but just like reading the panels, kind of going through it.
It's its own language.
It's its own thing. And sometimes it really,
because you don't even think about it anymore. Once you read it, you just do it.
But the first time you picked up a comic, something spoke to you and said, I dig how this paces out and how it takes me through it. And so when I look at the opportunities there, I don't look at it as like it's a more compacted thing. I just look at it as I get to tell this serialized story with these moments and these cliffhangers and these turns, and that I've seen in my head this character, in this black box one, as an example, is going to discover these new things about herself, and she's going to go from here to here by the end of it. And then whatever he wants to do with it after that, he wants to turn it into a trade. He wants to do another series and give it to you, Travis, which I will wholly encourage. You
hear that?
That's yeah. But that's the rhythm. And I didn't even, like, in my mind, it didn't even occur to me until Devin, the Marvel editor, said something about the trade. It's like I wasn't even cluing into the fact there would be like a Black Armor trade,
right,
even though that's what they were thinking of right away.
Yeah, that's the end product.
Like,
that's
it was almost end. Like, that was their end product. They could have cared less about the 4 1.5 issues that were going to make up this series, because they just want to get to the trade. But they have to do them to get to the trade. But to my mind, it was like, oh, okay, I'm back in that.
I hate that they have to do that, but that's just me. I wish I could buy more just trades. But that's a whole different discussion.
That's a whole different thing, right?
Because I much prefer
the collected trades, right?
I like this.
But I mean, we were having that conversation 25 years ago. To try to, how do we get out of this continuity trap, right? Of multiple.
I want this story. This guy can be in this story, but I want this story that I have right here to be complete and whole, and then on my shelf.
Right. But then that becomes the more compartmentalized piece that maybe you can then introduce somebody new to it.
Like, check this out. I have 7 more for you if you like that.
Exactly. So I don't look at it as a anything holding me back on that level. I find it just is. Yeah. That's the enjoyment of how comic book storytelling works as a reader, and when you create things that way.
So our next question's a little tricky for you.
And because these other
both of the next one, the next 2 are really interesting because you're an interesting specimen, Dan, for our format.
And now we will dissect you.
Yes. Let's see what makes you tick. So what does leveling up in comics look like for you? What do you think what comes next? What do you think your next level up is? Not your ultimate, like, end goal, but like, what do you see next?
Let me just be sure I understand your question. Is it about what I think is next for comics overall, or what I think is next for comics?
For you, like,
for me,
if you're going to level up and do something, like take another step up on your comeback tour, what does that look like? What is the next level for you?
I mean, my ideal next level would be to expand this Kickstarter world, right? That would be
more creator focused, more creator owned focused,
and almost that world.
Yeah,
because we've done so much work in it, and
you got the bones, and you just want to keep filling it out.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's 5 issues written for Carl right now, which is what this thing is supposed to lead into. Then there's another 7 issues I've written.
Yeah, you got all those other departments that you can play around in.
Exactly. So it's a big world. So I would be thrilled to kind of open that up and keep doing that, and then getting myself better and improving my skill set, through that. That would be definitely a level up, for me, and finding a way to continue to just balance that out, with everything else that maybe the other things pay the bills more.
Sure.
But I still want to keep those, those are important things to keep going as well, not just because they pay the bills, because I also think they level you. And by that, I mean, it's been thrilling to kind of go to a convention, and this is the therapy part of our conversation. It's fun to go to the convention and have somebody come up to you and say, I love your stuff. I grew up on your stuff. Or now that I'm doing all these like promotional posts for Daredevil, especially, like, oh my God, we can't wait. This is overdue, and this is going to be awesome, and the stuff looks great, the teasers look great. Man, it is so easy to get full of yourself a little bit, start to, like,
before it's really out there even.
Right. I'm not I'm Chichester. I'm DG Chichester, or like, it's like, what? Oh, bullshit. Like, I was on top, like 30 years ago, right? I was the Daredevil guy.
Yeah.
Right. And then on that Tuesday, at 7:27 p.m. I'm joking. I don't actually remember it to that degree.
Yeah.
But
you do have it written down.
Yeah, I have it tattooed on my inner arm.
It would be on another part of my body.
Sure. A little less accessible.
And things just go down, right? It comes crashing down. So you want to maintain a balance about yourself and the work that you're doing, and that in some ways leveling up with just being able to be able to continue now to tell these types of stories in different formats, for different publishers or whatever,
Right.
or just the opportunity to do it. It's just really enjoyable. And it doesn't have to be a knockout of the park every time. I think it's just an important part of myself and my ability to do this and my standing in whatever the industry and the track record I do have to just be able to continue to find ways to play that out. That would be a great level up for me because I didn't do it for a long time, and I ignored it sometimes consciously, which was, again, my own issues.
Oh, that's interesting. Travis, the last one.
You know what? I think he's answered this in the stuff.
I think so a little bit too, but there it could be.
So we have a fourth one that we ask sometimes, but it's depending on how you answer the other questions. And the question is, what do you think your next level up will be? So what do you think the next thing for you is? But
I just went into that. That's what I. Oh man, I already said that kind of.
You've kind of.
So what's the big level up? Would you want to expand this universe to have more creators involved? Do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry.
What?
Or do you want to get on our publisher
that kind of thing, or
I mean, publisher picking up on something would be really cool because, as we know, you, Travis, especially, this crowdfunding thing is a slog, right? And I'm like, I'm 2 weeks in and I'm already, 20 years. And he's kind of, a little bit, but I like the people, but I kind of hate the process. But the publishing aspect of it is a double-edged sword in the sense that you have that sense as a creative person that I just want to do the work. I want the work to speak for itself. I don't want to be bothered with all the rest of it.
Right.
Certain aspects of those days will never come back. Mm-hmm. You have got to be marketing yourself and pushing yourself and getting yourself out there and pimping yourself and everything else. But yeah, that'd be nice if somebody else could carry, some of the water. But I would like to expose it to, to more
eyes.
I meant more creative eyes.
Oh, not
like readers' eyes, certainly readers' eyes. But even just getting Dean Kotz involved in this, because nobody had touched any of this besides from Carl Waller, right?
Yeah.
Carl's working on this a long time, and we've been talking about it for a long time, and he's been living with this. So to have Dean come in and read the stuff and read the plot and read the background and then look at the artwork and work with Carl on some of the stuff, and then suddenly to come back with something, that's a whole different look at those characters.
Yeah.
Right. That says to me, and him to then have a response to it and said, this is really wild. This is a grindhouse thing. Love what you guys are doing. Blah, blah, blah. Is a nice, or says to me that there is something here that other people might want to play with.
Yeah.
And I love the thing about comics that I've been reminded of is how much fun it is to work with people, right? So it's a lot of fun to have that energy and that synergy kind of going back and forth. So that would be a wonderful level up to kind of have more opportunities to connect with even more creators on this, or even on projects I know nothing about yet.
Sure. Future stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing quite like a group of people focusing on the same goal, especially when it's creative focused.
Yeah. And you make yourself
it's tough to beat that feeling of like group wholesomeness while you work and be as creative as possible. Even raunchy can be wholesome depending on how it is.
I would say holistic.
Yeah.
Like you have a common
wholesomistic.
And you have to get to the point. Wholesomistic.
That's a word.
Yeah. It's a word.
You have to be comfortable enough to be okay with kicking the shit out of each other.
Sure.
Because the worst part is when you're like dancing around it. Oh, that's nice. I guess that'll be okay. But if you're really trying to kind of create that level of tension that is going to make things better and make you better in the process, is you have to be able to be honest with yourself and say, you know what, that's not working.
Yeah, and be honest with the others.
Right, and be honest with the others.
Right.
I mean, it's and I've said a few times, Greg writes, my best friend in this regard, and that means he's my worst critic and my best critic.
Right.
Yep. So I wouldn't send him that Axel's Infernal run, those first 5 issues, even though I wanted to for a long time, because I was afraid he would come back and say, you're deluding yourself.
Sure.
This sucks and it's not going to work. And so when I did finally get up the gumption to send it to him, then the email came back and said, yeah, I'm sorry, it doesn't work. And then like 50 lines, where he put a big separation to then, go, yeah, okay, gotcha, motherfucker. Now, let's break it down. And then he broke it down.
Sure.
Worked, but he really ripped into it.
It's still going to be critical, which is super necessary.
You don't want your mom as your inner circle, right? You don't want Todd, nice job. Travis, this is really, really good.
Oh, thanks.
People who are honest.
And then you're ripped to shreds by dozens more.
But you want, it's like anything. You want you get stronger. Your muscles get stronger by being tested. Yep. And that's what you want out of.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's just what you need in general in life. Mm-hmm. Like that's so important.
We got to go, but it's such
it's
a weird. I mean, we don't have to go. We'll stay forever. Todd's got to pee soon, though.
I will. I'm trying. We were doing questions. I'm like, I can hold it.
All right, go. You got to go. When you got to go, you got to go. Quite literally.
We're right there. So.
Yeah. So comics, and why Todd and I are friends. Todd was running a different podcast and stuff. In the indie scene with Kickstarter and stuff, there's so low barrier of entry. And the things that you just said are what so many of the people, my peers, don't always want to do. Many of them, I listen to Todd go, hey, so what's your favorite comic? I don't really like comics that much. I'm like, why the fuck are you writing a comic?
Are you doing this? What's the point?
But they don't love the industry. They don't care about it. And because it's crowdfunding, your mom and your cousin and all them, they pay for the first one a lot of times, right? Like you don't have they're bored with you being a comic writer. That was 20 years ago. But a lot of these new people on the block, their family will help fund and overinflate how good, and they should. Like your family should invest in you. That's not a bad thing. But I think what you said is so important. There is nothing I love more than someone who I respect reading my comic going, this is good, but I think you could do better because of blah, 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 this, blah, 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 blah. Let me rip it apart. So I can, because I want to be the best at this, so I want someone to rip it apart to be better. So appreciate
you discover things that and it isn't always like it doesn't work. It's like, how will it be better? Right. With this Axel's Infernal thing, I took a very conscious choice to, I've written every way under the sun, I think. I've written, first person internal narratives. I've written the overwritten third person, over literary descriptions. In this one, I took a very, I think, clean, streamlined approach, which felt very appropriate to the character and the world and everything. I really liked the rhythm of it. And I was letting it breathe because Carl had some just bold, visuals. And Greg had come back and he had seen the stuff and he said, you need more words. And by that, he meant that the eye was going across the page too quickly. Right. Because there was nothing there.
You're just flying
through
it.
You're through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that instance, you're not appreciating the moments, which, I think I'm doing a good job by finally not overwriting. And in fact, it needed that kind of observation, that third person stuff. But the inner circle is like a critical thing. You find those 3, 4, 5 people that will always be true to you. You do everything you can. You make sure they're on your Christmas card list because you want to keep those people close because they will be invaluable for the endeavors you do, and you will be invaluable to them as well.
That's great. That's great.
Oh, it's so wholesomistic.
Wholesomistic. I love it. All right, we're gonna go DM that word.
Todd, I think we have leveled up.
I think we have too. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. Let's play the outro.
Yeah. And everybody, link to the Kickstarter is in the description. Go click that, check it, and then do the pledge thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We got 6 pledges so far. I think we can get them a good solid 10 or 20. So let's do this, guys.
Let's do it.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. It's been a thrill. It really has been.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Bye.
And we just leveled up. Bye.